So I'm down here, and I'm by Park Christian Church. You'll see it on my left-hand side when I make a turn right here. So this church has an auditorium. This auditorium during the week is not being used. So here's Park Church right here. Here's the entrance. And so it says Park Church on top here. Let me see if I'm in the photo. No, that's me. And I can't. But sorry to do that to you. But anyways, it's right here. And the reason I point this out is, yes, that auditorium and that they can lend out to the Small Business Administration and SCORE, which does small business consulting. It's a nonprofit consulting agency and other things. And so what they do is, even for job training and education, the church can rent that out for different types of seminars for community development. Why wouldn't they rent it out and they could work with local government in that and do different community development initiatives, educational seminars? Like they can have 1 week, 5 days, since the days they're not using it, say Monday through Friday, they have an evening seminar at the church on, starting a small business or job improvement seminars, self-development seminars, how as a older person, how to use the lifetime learning credit and how to apply it to different educational things, or how to use your local library to improve your, resume, or to improve your, knowledge base, or things along those lines. So just different developments, so they can work and educate the congregation on different things to develop the congregation. I used to go to Park, and if they offered things like that, personal development, and yes, you would do it business by the book and everything, and part of them collaborating with you is that the pastor has to see how it fits in with the biblical mandate. And so the pastor would work with them to develop the seminars, and then put 1 James or 1 John or 1 Paul or whatever may be, different biblical mandates with this. And this is why the church is doing it, because it's fulfilling a biblical mandate. The church doesn't do things that don't align with the Bible, only if it fulfills a biblical mandate. And so the different biblical mandates, the church seeks out these partners to help develop the congregation. And so the church now is not an idle place that sits there. Now that even at Covenant First Presbyterian, so the temple can be used, the church, the chamber, like at Moody and that Moody Church, for congregational development. And so they help develop their congregations, and that's what the Bible mandates. And so they reach out for partners that come in that can present certain things that help the congregation develop. And so the church is really a place for spiritual development. because as you develop yourself outside the church, you're only there for the sermons and that, and you're developing yourself. And they can work this with small groups as well, and they can give certain readings and that, and the church can use the public library. Oh yeah, the church can tell them to go take out these books, and it's religious books as well. The church can use the public library. You don't have to purchase certain books. They can rent them at the public library, and the public library, if they don't have enough, they ask the author for others, or they loan them from other public libraries. That's what they do. Public libraries do swaps with other public libraries. So say you're doing Rick Warren's A Purpose-Driven Life. The public library might have a copy, right? Well, it can ask the other public libraries in their systems. Their system should show all the resources that other public libraries have in Chicago. And they're like, okay, your small group is doing it. And so these 20 public libraries, because there's 20 people, we get it from this public library. We order it from that, and then by the time you're start the study, and you can do Rick Warren's Perfect Driven Life. See, the pastor doesn't do this, but you can do sermon series based on Messy Spirituality by Michael Yaconelli. And you give a biblical overlay, their personal touch with the study, and they have this, and it's a whole congregational study. And they can get resources from the public library. That lowers the cost, of the church, and lowers how much the congregation has to spend. And since they're live in the city, they can all get those resources, and it taps into a public-private partnership. The church is private, and it uses the library as a resource, and hence it taps into the library and says, I need 20 books on this, or I might need 500 books. And if you can't get them, can you get authorization, like, to copy the book? And we've done this with small group. We didn't have enough books, so sometimes we copied the book and gave them out these copies. Now, you would have to get approval from the publisher, but a lot of books are out of print. Truly, they're out of print. They're not printing anymore. So it's not like you're screwing the publisher. If the book is out of print, then no. But if it's in print, and yes, the library can purchase the book for the church. The library uses their economies of scale. The church pays for it, plus a fee to the library. And yes, the library's profit center, and they give them, 10% or 20% over what it costs to pay for their services and administration, and a little bump in fee. So the library orders it for the church. So again, they have all the infrastructure, and the church just tells them what they need. And whatever they have, they can borrow from the church, from the library. So if they have, blank books, they can order from their library and borrow them from other Chicago libraries, because other people aren't using them because they're checked in. Then, after the sermon, you might do a month study or whatever it is, and then you return the books and they send them back. So you check them out for a month. But this cuts the operational budget of a church. So they can work with these structures, beautiful girls. They can work with these structures for personal development. And so they can pair up in the church these books. that they pair up the sermon with, part of the sermon is directly from the Bible and part of it is from different published books. I mean, I don't know how many I bought over the last 20 years or so. I bought so many different religious books, it's unbelievable. Because of all the books at all of our different small groups, from Lakeview to NCPC, I just bought books. Me and Jen did, and I bought a ton when I did Bible study with Jen. I have all these. I have them all. They're somewhere. Meaning, I don't have them organized together, but I've bought a lot of books that are on the Bible. An incredible amount of books on the Bible. And so, from ones I did with the church and ones that I did independent study of my own. So, I have a massive collection. It's unbelievable how many I have. It's incredible the amount that I have. But they can work with the public library. And so they can do congregational developments. And each church can start business by the book and help people. This is the work side of things. Business by the book means if you're an owner of a business, if you're a manager of a business, if you're an employee of the business, and it goes into the obligations. I'll take a look at the girls. It goes into the obligations. Nice. It goes into the obligations that you have as an employer or as a manager or pieces of garbage. Some guy pissing on the door or supposedly pissing all over outside. So this means this can be built out nationally. It doesn't matter. There's 45,000 different churches, and this means the Amish community can use the public library. And they can work with it for different book resources and that. And this brings down the cost of the church, and the church maximizes its ability to leverage the resources of the government, the public library. We used to do Bible study in the park, so the church can get picnic licenses and other things. So my small group during the summer, we used to go to a park in the West Loop. Instead of going to somebody's house, we do a picnic and Bible study in the park. So you can do movies in the park as a small group and go to movies in the park in Chicago as a small group. Now, we didn't do that. We did it as a friend group. It would be me, Jen, my ex Jennifer Kim, Mia, Grace, Lisa, and numerous others. But it was me and a bunch of Asian females. Mainly. There'd be like James or Jay sometimes, but it was basically overwhelming amount of women and then me, usually. Like when I went to see, and I saw it multiple times, Wicket, it's me and like 8 Asian females. So Chicago's finest. So anyways, you have Holy Name Cathedral down here and that. And they can do development. But that's when I was around Jen. It was me, and I didn't make it up that way. It just happened. And all those girls loved me and loved being around me. So it'd be me with Jen and all of them. Their boys didn't choose to come. So it wasn't, here's Holy Name. And Jay Kim had his wedding here. And then down the street, and this is what Holy Name doesn't understand. They have the Sofitel Hotel right down here and other hotels around them. So we had the wedding there and the reception at the Sofitel, which is right down the street. And then I went to, I think it's Raj. Yeah, it is Raj. He went to University of Chicago booth, and we had some Subway in between the service and reception. We hung out and talked for a while. He's an Indian guy. And I went to the movies with him too in the suburbs. He and Carol were hanging out, Carol Chen. And Raj, he's an Indian guy, and they were hanging out, and they met me and Jen at the theater in Lincolnshire to see a movie. But anyways, I know you don't know him, but I'm just bringing him up. And I used to go to Loyola here, right here in the Loop, in this building. I'll show you where. So, I used to take classes at Loyola. So, these pieces of garbage, right here, piece of fucking trash, driving people around the city, not following laws. Why don't they suspend his Uber license or Lyft license? They have a GPS. They know the speed. It's right in. And they give the driver a warning. You're speeding. And warning. And if you speed again, they take you off the system. You're suspended from the system. So the GPS tells them where they are and tells them the speed limit. And the system suspends them. And it fines them. When they speed, their pay gets docked. The system already knows. And then I told you the system has a two-way camera. It looks outward and inward for driver safety. So that little app also sees the inside. It doesn't show on the screen, but the people are aware you're being recorded, both audible and video. So it's built into the Uber and Lyft apps, and then the cameras, front cameras are engaged, and they can do it all in the app, and it watches the driver's spacing. It has proximity. The camera can see how close you are in that, and it flags them immediately. Warning about tailgating. First warning. Second time you do it, you get fined. Meaning you got warned, now you get fined. You do it again, 3 strikes, you're out. Your license is suspended. There's 3 lanes. 2 of them are empty. I'm not going anywhere. So that Uber driver would be immediately suspended. He was tailgating. See, it doesn't matter how slow I'm going. See, Uber is a mileage system, not a time system, and they set a fare. So they calculate the fare, and it's a flat rate. So it doesn't matter how long it takes to get there. You've already been charged. So there's no incentive for the driver to speed. That's the point of it. I get my rate. It says, to this location, $14. I accept. It's fixed rate. So there is no incentive to speed. So if a driver speeds, and remember, it's recording audio, if the passengers tell the driver to speed, the word speed up, go faster, hurry up, the camera flags it, knows who's in the car, and penalizes the client and can suspend them. You're no longer an Uber customer. You cannot, and it tells you an app, you cannot tell the driver to go faster. Driver must obey all traffic. And if you ask the driver, we will take you off the app. So it punishes the passengers as well. So they can't tell you to go faster. Sit back, enjoy the ride. And they can say, can you turn it to Q101.1? Ask the driver to turn up the music, to turn it to a certain station, or to turn off the music. Truly, do you want WGN? I want the news. I want the weather. Turn that on. That's what I asked them every time they got in. When I was what would you like to listen to? I didn't care how short it is. I just changed the channel. One person said, I want sleep music. Okay, that's fine. I went to YouTube and grabbed sleep sounds and played sleep sounds. The driver shouldn't be overtired. It didn't bother me. He slept. I drive. So the passenger gets penalized and the driver gets penalized. And they both can be deactivated. So there is no incentive to speed. They need to be stripping these pieces of shit of their fucking license. And Uber, I want Uber and Lyft to support them to the DMV and report them to the insurance company. Oh yeah. And we tell the drivers, when you do a violation, we self-report to our insurance companies. And we show them what action we did to neutralize the liability. So we get rewarded, you get punished. Our premiums go down because we reported you. Your premiums go up. Truly, the company premiums go down, the driver's liability premium goes up, disincentivizing them. The insurance company will adjust the rates for that driver up. So again, they just use the simple cell phone. And then if they know this, the driver can say, help. It's already recording. And it calls out 911 and gives them the GPS location automatically. That's just artificial intelligence. It's no one listening. It's the AI that's listening. And it flags things right away. So the driver is secure. So you don't have like Dexter in the Dark Passenger. Because it has two cameras, meaning two directional. It looks outward at the traffic in front of them, and it looks backwards. And if somebody's tailgating, it shows them getting tailgated. And so it submits the information into the court. So it looks piece of shit cabbie and 2411 and him sign. It flags them and they self-report as a corporation. I self-reported, people. You fuck up, I'm turning you over to the cops. I told Mike Whitehead that in there. People, I said, you bring drugs into my car, I'm taking you right to the police station. Oh, that was for Ross and anyone else. They didn't bring drugs in my car. And I told them, you bring drugs in my car, and I see you doing drugs, I'm locking the door and taking you to the police. Now, Mike called me DEA, but I told my friends, you bring any illegal shit into my car, I'm taking you to jail. You're not bringing me down with your criminal action. You keep your shit out of my car. But I forewarned them. And that's the God's honest truth. And it should say that on the AppNet. For Uber, Lyft, taxi, no drugs allowed in the car. No alcohol allowed in the car. No guns allowed in the car. No knives allowed in the car. Truly. And if you have mace, you got to notify the driver. Truly. But no weapons allowed in the vehicle. If you got a concealed carry, you got to disclose it. And got to get approval by Lyft, Uber, the limo company, the taxi cab. And they say, no, we don't want your business. Meaning, you can't carry the concealed carry. They have to make a decision and tell you, no, you can't bring in our car. And if you don't want to use us, then don't use us. But we don't allow your concealed carry. But I would assume Jennifer Kim, who's a prosecutor, she has a concealed carry and she's been trained. Those people I would approve. But none of this shit. It's the same way for the police. We put the phone in their car and they put it on their dash and it monitors them. And it watches how they drive. So they have video recording. It wasn't their fault or was their fault in an accident. And then we sue you. If it's the cop's negligence, we pay out as the government, and then we go after the officer who did the negligence. And we tell him, we will sue you. So we get sued for police brutality, you lose, we go after you as the cop. So it comes back to your actions. Self-accountability. You don't get out of it. If I ran a club and I told my doorman, you did this, we get sued and we won't, then I'm going to sue you. So if you do an action and it's proven wrong, I'm going to sue you, and if you don't, I'm going to garnish your wages. You're not working for me any longer, and I'm going to go after your future wages. So I don't care if I get cents back on a dollar. The point is, I want to punish you for fucking me. So I don't care. We pay out $1 million or whatever, and I get back $100,000. So what? You had to live at 25% less. And the point is, I continuously hammer you. And that way, I impoverish you for your wrongful action the rest of your fucking life. So no more of this shit. The system's already in place. And that means for any worker. And you can put this up in the train too. And the city hooks through their app. You have a City of Chicago app and they put it up there. And they put the phone up there, and the app is on. So you don't have to buy body cameras for people who work for the CTA or RTA. The bus driver has this phone. It goes up right in the middle. It looks down the aisle of the bus, protecting the driver. And it looks forward at how the driver's driving. So they don't have to buy any infrastructure. That was my point with Google and Microsoft and that, and building out Silicon Valley with Apple and the others right here. And I want them and I demand them to be here. They don't get a fucking option, or I go somewhere else. I choose where everything occurs. They have no fucking choice. It's just like an actor with a script, like Rocky. He put himself in. You have no choice. I'll go to another place. You like the script that much? This is my role. That's what Ben Affleck and Matt Damon said. Hey, if it was garbage, they'll turn it down. That's their risk. But they went in and said, yep, you got the roles. So I tell them where they operate. They get no fucking choice. So, no, it's not free will. And fine, turn it down. I know a shitload of other software companies that would take it. So, if they want to go under, then they turn down my shit. I love competition. It creates a knife for me where I can implode your corporation. So either you bend to my fucking will, or you get crushed by the competition. Here's Scout. They opened up over here. I liked them. They used to have really hot waitresses in that, and bartenders. I used to know all the waitresses at Scout. And they liked me, all those girls. Truly, we became very friends. And they had lots of beautiful waitresses. And my bartender, a girl I worked with from Boston, here, she came to go to school, and she went to school at the same time. She worked for us at Excalibur. And not Kelly, I forget her name, but she was from South Boston, and she threw down. But she was a bigger girl, but beautiful. She is a beautiful girl from South Boston, and I used to go to Scout to say hi to her when she was bartending there. She left Excalibur, and she was bartending at Scout. And she's about 6 foot or something. She came down here for college. So when she worked at Excalibur, she started off at Excalibur at the door. Yeah, she was one of our girls at the door at Excalibur that collected money. And then she worked at the dorm room doing the same thing. So I work with her sometimes because I was always at the door with the girl who was collecting the money, making sure people paid. My job was to card them and make sure they paid. Their job was to collect the money. But again, she worked at Scout. And I used to go in and sit at the bar and say hi to her. But she went to college and graduated from college working in the service industry. So all these people, like here at Rick's Cabaret, they can work at Rick's while they go to college. My ex, Michelle, She worked in the industry, and as she was going to college, she was a pre-med student. Pre-medical. So she was working at Baja Beach Club, Hooters, and she worked at 3 jobs. She worked at Baja as a beer tub girl. She worked at Hooters as a cocktail waitress. And then she worked at VIP's as a dancer. She had 3 jobs. And she went to college. So, hardworking, smart, industrial girl. So again, that's what she did, and she finished college. So I haven't seen her in a long time. And I don't know if it's Kaylee is another girl, well, who's on my Instagram I have a crush on. And it was great. She works for FINRA. I knew she worked for FINRA. She worked for a regulator. She was always on my Facebook. And it was good to have her on my Facebook. And I knew I had FINRA regulators and government officials on my Facebook. Didn't stop me from posting. I'm not doing anything wrong. And now she's on my Instagram. But also, one thing great about her, she had tons of incredibly beautiful girlfriends. It's like Jen. She had lots of great girlfriends. And I got to be friends with all of them. That was a big perk. That's how I ended up with Sylvia as my client. One of Jen's girlfriends. So, Kaylee has tons of girlfriends. And happens to be, they're all incredibly attractive. So Jen had a whole group of incredible, truly, those girls, I love those girls. They were all very good, smart, driven, and yes, attractive. What's wrong with being attractive? It seems like today, something's wrong with being attractive. So, anyways, they can build this out. And when they do, the fuck? Excuse the French. But anyways, they can build this out. And the software and that. And this is great for all those companies because primarily Google has to remember it's a software company. So is Microsoft and that. These are software companies. Apple started out as a hardware company and a software company. Steve Jobs built hardware and software. So Apple is both a hardware and software company. Now Microsoft has got into hardware, but remember, Apple used their hardware only for them. Their software only for them. That's why they needed to be a hardware company as well. People forget who they are. And Google has to remember, Samsung is the largest provider of cell phones in the world, and LG is a huge cell phone provider, and their systems are both on Samsung and LG phones. So I don't want Google to get lost as a hardware provider, and I don't want Microsoft to get too much into the hardware. Apple sits on an island and doesn't really sell much because it sells it through its own hardware. So it has computers, cell phones, tablets, and so on, where Microsoft has some, and it's fine to dip your toe in, and it helps you perfect it with your hardware. And how you sell this at Google, the Pixel, to Samsung and everything else, is that by having our own device, we work on perfecting the software. We're more intricate because we can control the chips and the motherboards and the cameras and so on. And with your phones, we don't have that controlled, and we build out the software and everything. But by having our own, we're perfecting it. We're not trying to take away your market, but it allows us to tinker with our cameras, and we'll do it in a limited market, offer the Pixel in only a few markets. But it allows our people to see how the software interacts with the physical device, and we can see different chips and different lenses and different motherboards and so on. And that allows us to tweak things internally to get better, to give you better software, software Samsung or LG or the others. Remember, Microsoft is in every computer. So there are in so many different company computers, and they don't understand. They don't want to lose that. That gives them incredible economies of scale. And so all those people through all those different computers buy Microsoft packages. So that means Microsoft is everywhere around the world because these are hardware providers that need the software to run them. And so Google can't lose who they are, and Microsoft shouldn't lose who they are. Apple was a hybrid company from the beginning with Steve Jobs. He produced a lot of hardware. And so he needed to, because they needed somewhere to put their software. And I don't want Apple is a pure play. So I don't want them to lose themselves. As I said, they can do outside consulting, but that's just a small spoke. All their stuff focuses inward majority, and they have a few tentacles or spokes, but they're looking to grow out both their hardware and software business at Apple through perfecting both the hardware and software. So it's a little different in operation. So they have to remember who they are and not lose themselves. And this is why Apple had that competitive advantage on ecosystems, is because they designed the hardware and they designed the software, and they can make them perfectly fit. So the user interface the last time I was on an Apple was incredibly good. And this is why I say to Google and that, the Pixel helps you perfect it for Samsung. But Samsung, to perfect it for them, and LG and others, they have to give you the phone way in advance. So once they go on the specs of the phone and design all the hardware, Samsung has to give it to you so your software engineers can mess around with it and tweak the software to make it perfect for the phone, to create more competition for Apple. So they're working through Samsung, perfecting it, but they have to give them the stuff, their computers and everything, in advance. So I don't know if Samsung uses both Microsoft and Google, because Samsung produces a lot of computers. And I think Samsung uses both Microsoft and Google. They use Google in some systems and Microsoft in other systems, I think. But I'll have to look it up. But again, it creates this pairing. And so these companies can't lose who they are, because when they start losing who they are, they open up a crack in their armor and somebody else moves in. And this is what you have to learn from the Japanese. Instead of constantly perfecting their hardware, some companies, like Sony, they made a lot of hardware. They weren't so much a software provider, and they dominated the TV market. And why would you exit the TV market? You were the leading producer of TVs. Truly, they were. And they wanted to get out of the hardware market and more into the software. Why? Continue to perfect your TVs, and then you got computer screens and phone screens. Samsung could have sold off their screen technology. They're perfecting it to many companies. They could sell it to LG, to Samsung, to many other companies, and they got away from being a hardware expert, and they suffered. And that's what happened to Hitachi and many others. And it's like, why would you ever do that? And then there's now a new TV thing that merged in right into their market because they gave it up. Why wouldn't you just keep on perfecting it? And so, again, you have to understand who you are and keep on perfecting your market. And you can go more vertical, either upstream or downstream, from security cameras to all that is hardware. And so they could have went across many industries into manufacturing. Sony could have went into manufacturing, and all those screens for the CNC machines or others, they all use screens. They have screen interfaces, and Sony could have gotten into that. They were the leader in TV, the leader in screen technology, and they lost who they were. And I watched all these Japanese firms that were big shrink unbelievably because they lost their way. And they didn't need to. I'm looking at these. These are screens too. See this right here? That's a screen. These are screens too. That sign? Those are all, basically, these are dumb screens. But this one, it says open here. They turn it on and off, but it's a screen. But now they have all video billboards and all this. And those are smart screens, and Sony can get into those. So they got to remember, they're in the screen market. And it doesn't matter if it's a digital billboard or a TV or a computer screen or a phone screen or a screen on a refrigerator or a screen on a stove or a screen on a CNC machine. They're in the screen market. Now, they have their entertainment side. That's different. But you have to remember what market you're in, and when you start going back, competitors flood in. And so TVs aren't going anywhere. So you still need TVs to see the audio, video together, and they'll be here 20 years from now and 50 years from now. Now, what they're made of in that and how they interact will be different, but they're not going anywhere. So all these screens just need to evolve. And so I'm for that, not telemetry. And so my quantum entanglement is for the internal brain, not between brains. You lock in, but you don't share thoughts. I'm not trying to develop that. I'm trying to develop the internal speed. And I want the privacy to stay. I don't want people. And God asked me, and this is a true thing I'll share with you. And you say, okay, I'm nuts. I speak to God. Okay, however you want to take it. But ask me, do I want to read minds? And my reply was no. I want them to have their privacy. I want them to do this is a long decades and decades ago. But my response was no. I want them to have their privacy. I want to build their internals. I don't want to know on their mind. That makes life interesting. When you can read somebody's mind, it gets really boring. Yeah, you can do it like Jones, the TV show, where the guy could read and manipulate. Yeah, you can get people that are incredibly evil. And I couldn't watch much of that because it got me so sick I had to turn it off, and I've never gone back to the Jessica Jones, the rest of the episodes. I skipped ahead when he got killed off. So again, I set up my polygraphs in that, not to read your thoughts to determine if your thoughts are good or bad. I don't want to know your thoughts. All I want to do is set up my systems to judge good or bad thoughts. So reading the nose, like when you're lying, that's a bad action. If you're not telling the truth on a polygraph, that's the stuff I perfect. So I made this decision decades ago that I don't want to build out the human mind that way, and I don't want other people to do this. And we build out predictive analytics, and this protects actuaries and everything else by not having this. And so they got to build out their actuarial science. See, you get lazy if you can read thoughts. And you do. You get lazy, and then you don't have to pay attention to body language and everything else. And it's a very horrible thing. So I think, and I said this to God, that I don't want it that way. And we shouldn't be moving it that way. Our systems are determining you have good intentions or bad intentions, and that's what I talk about with the dogs and that. It's good intentions, bad intentions. To be able to sniff a pedophile, since he's not telling you he's a pedophile, and taking protective action, and this is why we have the sexual offenders database, is so you can take protective action when they come up on a background check. And you have small children, you're like, well, we can't let you live in this building. You have to move into a building that's an adult-only building. You can't be around small children. And that's what the database protects. You can't have a house next to a school. You're not allowed to go by schools. And if you have children and you get married and that, then you have to have a guardian oversee, making sure that you're not doing anything perverted to the children. These are just systems of protection, protecting you from your evil self. So again, these systems need to be developed correctly. So we shouldn't be reading people's mind. We can interpret their actions. And so that's the good or the bad, like a polygraph, lying, telling the truth. And we're asking you for the information in the polygraph. And we're determining whether you have a positive or negative reaction to it. And so we have to do a lot of work. And that keeps the mind sharp. It will get sloth, and deteriorate. You'll become lazy. But this way, you got to figure things out. And so I share things willingly, but I also have the right to say nothing. And that's what Jesus showed with Pontius Pilate and all that, and the Pharisees. I have the right to keep my mouth shut, and I have the right to open my mouth. And if you do incitement, and the founding fathers know this, then you're violating ours because they believe you have this right to remain silent. And if you induce somebody, then that's illegal, inciting. So you have to do it through your systems. The FBI has to perfect the polygraph and everything else. So they have to do it through the cameras, the dogs. They have to be trained and so on. And they build out all these different forms of detection. And that's how it's supposed to work. And so, no, I'm against mental telepathy. Truly, it's good for a magic show, but in reality, I'm against it. And I've always been against it. I like people having sovereignty, feeling secure that their own brain is not being fucked with. That no one's manipulating your shit. And if somebody is, I believe they are a threat to all of mankind and should be executed immediately. And I do mean putting them to fucking death. I believe this is a thing that they get the death penalty instantly. So, I believe certain things shouldn't occur. I believe there needs to be limitation. That's why we have sign language. Or in baseball, we do sign language. You know that in baseball, right? Like, you touch this cheek, and then you wipe the forehead. And that means you got the okay to steal second base. Touching the cheek means that the next thing tells you what to do. If they don't touch the cheek, and they wipe their chin and wipe their forehead, it means nothing. So you learn that in baseball. And the other team has the right to steal your signs. But that's during the game. So they can watch the third base coach. And if they break down the analytics, that's on them. They can't share it with any other team. That's their competitive intelligence. So in baseball, when I grew up, if we could steal the opposing team's signs, that was fair. So again, we couldn't give them to another team. And sometimes we did pick up on their third base coach and what they were telling, and that was our competitive intelligence. We knew them, we gave them the steal sign. So we do a pitch out, and the runner's going, and we throw the second and get him out. But we changed our signs in baseball. So every so often, we would change the starting point. So it wouldn't be touching your face on the cheek. It would be pulling your nose, like blowing your nose with a Kleenex. So we changed things up from game to game. So if you ended up stealing our signs, it was only for one game. The next game, the shit was different. And that's competitive intelligence. So that was legal growing up in baseball. And sometimes we did if they were in a bunt or any other single and we were able to pick it up. Well, that's our win. So that is not illegal. You can't share it with anyone. We couldn't give it to a bunch of other teams to tank you. We just kept it to ourselves. But we had one of the coaches in the dugout would watch their coach on third base and see if they could pick up anything. So, again, these are competitive intelligence. But, again, anyone that actually physically reads the thoughts, and I'm worried about VR headsets, if they can actually read the thoughts and somebody can hack it, then they can literally hack your mind. And so I'm very worried about this. And you watch the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie where they do this, and you can see the dilemma. So it's one thing if you're detecting somebody telling the truth or not, but it's another thing if you hear what they say. And I'm against that. And I believe that should be one thing the death penalty is given for. And again, I go back there, but I believe they should be executed. There are certain things that scientists breach, like Joseph Mengele, that they just breached and crossed the red line, and they should be killed. Teaching other scientists not to cross the red line. So I do believe in the death penalty for scientists. They can hurt so many people so fast, it's unbelievable. It's like the bomb makers. The guys who made the suicide vests, they didn't blow themselves up. But go through Obama. He did drone strikes and killed the bomb maker. Also, Obama, what did he do? He killed the social media guy who did the social media posts, the recruiter who was working through Twitter. He got him in a car and sent a drone missile and killed him. And I agreed with Obama. So when I mention his drone strikes, I don't disagree with those actions, with those drone strikes. He should have killed the Twitter guy. He should have killed the bomb maker. I believe those are eligible for the death penalty. So did President Obama. He ordered the drones to kill him. And I do agree with this. He did the most drone strikes, but the thing is, I disagreed with pulling the troops out, because when he pulled the troops out, he had to do more drone strikes. And it was only catching certain people, but it wasn't catching all the Indians that worked for them. We got some chiefs, but the infrastructure was still there. With the troops on the ground, they couldn't build the infrastructure. So I disagreed with him, and he created a system where you had to do more drone strikes. And I like us in 80 countries and 750 military bases. And like I said, at the Yucatan Peninsula, we should be building out a new carrier base. I like the boots on the ground. So again, I disagreed with Obama's strategy of pulling out and just doing drone strikes. It's effective to a point. And so, again, but I agreed with all the people that he killed. I mean, going through the drone strikes, I read a bunch of them. I don't think he did any incorrectly. He did a lot of them, way more than Bush, unbelievably. But the whole point is, it seemed like they were all necessary. The ones that I got to, I didn't see them all, but the ones that I saw, it seemed very legitimate that those people should have died. So I agreed with him taking them out. So again, clarifying my stance, but I believe certain things that scientists do, like the bomb maker, you get the death penalty. It's not if, it's just when we're going to get to you and try you and put you to death. It's simple as that, because then people don't want to make bombs for terrorists, do they? Because they know if they can't get away with the crime because they do the proxy, they just create the bomb. But at least they did this right in the TV show with Sylvester Stallone in Tulsa, and they killed the bomb maker. So again, I believe that these people crossed the line and they need to be put to death. But I'm going to leave this video here and post it. But again, if you want to use this, you go where I say you go. You don't get a choice. My choice. So if I say Microsoft and Google and Apple to build out here, they build out. If I say TMC here, they build out. They build where I fucking tell them to build if they want my stuff. And if they don't, that's fine. Their shit, they go where they want to.